here.
Hello and welcome to Peloton subscribers and Aerogram listeners to the La Course on Tête podcast. It's been such a long wait since the end of the Tour de France for another Grand Tour. I mean, 14 days. All that we had to tide us through was like a World Championships and some semi-classics. Anyway, the wait is over. Alongside me over the next half hour is a man who I like to think of as the crumpled soul of cycling journalism. He laughs, he cries, he looks good in a cravat. Hello, Jeremy Whittle.
Hello there, OJ. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much. I'm all right. And also with us is cycling raconteur Sophie Smith, who joins us from her beachside lockdown mega condo in Adelaide.
I'm actually in Melbourne, but
same thing.
The condo here is great too.
It's
slushing
the
rain
same
outside,
thing.
but you know.
Right. What should we do first then? Well, I think first we should reflect on a crazy weekend of racing. A downhill TT stage in the Giro, Van der Poel's brink back tour win, men's LBL, Lizzie Dynan's latest success, the EF kit shenanigans. Where do we go first? We go first to William Fotheringham. He'll update us on all the latest news, and I don't know where he recorded this, but I think it helps to imagine him reading this from a battered yet supremely comfortable leather club chair, possibly in the back room of a private members club.
So, welcome to this weekend's top news lines. It's hard to keep up with the way the big races keep coming at us in quick succession. Since we last put out a podcast, cycling has acquired two new world road champions, Julian Alaphilippe of France and Anna van der Breggen, who also doubled up with the time trial in Imola, Italy. We've got Super Sunday to look forward to later this month, but October started with a wild and woolly weekend. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Sunday. The women's race was an epic, with a courageous solo break by Lizzie Deignan that ended in a cliffhanging finish from lone chaser Grace Brown. A rare defeat for Van der Breggen and her fellow countrywoman Annemiek van Vleuten. The men's race will stick in Julian Alaphilippe's mind for a good long while, and in the minds of all those who watched it. Alaphilippe not only committed a schoolboy error by lifting his arms too early and letting Primoz Roglic roll him on the line, he was relegated to fifth for hooking Mark Hirschi. Oh yes, Mark Hirschi, the guy who won Flèche Wallonne in midweek. That already seems ages ago. Sticking in the Low Countries, Mathieu van der Poel delivered another cliffhanger. I keep using that term, but I'm not going to apologise. In the final stage of the Binkbank Tour on Saturday, winning overall by next to nothing after a lengthy lone escape into Gerardsbergen. Alongside all that, the Giro seemed relatively staid, racing-wise. Stage 1, a high-speed downhill time trial into Palermo, won by Filippo Ganna, the world time trial champion. And Stage 2, an uphill finish at Agrigento, which went to Diego Ulissi. That is probably as predictable as this particular Giro will get. Off the bike, the big news there was the marketing coup delivered by EF Education, who switched their kit from a restrained fluorescent pink to a frankly hallucinogenic design from a skateboard company featuring, of all things, a duck. It was the best kept secret in cycling this year and a massive talking point until Sunday afternoon. Time for a Sergio Leone reference or two. Was that kit good, bad, or just ugly? Either way, definitely a case of duck, you suckers.
I could listen to William Fotheringham say the word hallucinogenic all day long, Jez.
Well, he is a wordsmith, isn't he, OJ? So you've got to expect him to come up with that kind of verbosity from time to time.
Oh, look at you with verbosity. Let's stick the Giro on the back burner. We'll do that towards the end of the show, including when we talk about it. We've got a great chat with Marco Pastonesi of La Gazzetta dello Sport, and also the EF kit stuff, which you've got a little bit of an insight on that as well, Jeremy. But first, of all the things that have happened in those news lines, Sophie, what was the biggest story for you?
I don't think you can go past Alaphilippe and that Liège finish. It's just was that his first outing as world champion, like in the rainbow stripes.
It was, yeah.
See, I just cringed. I just almost went red-faced for him. You know, when he won the world championships, everyone was so excited because he has such panache, he just belongs in the rainbow. And I agree with all of that. But then to come out and, we all make mistakes. And he said he didn't mean to, post-race, he was like, I didn't mean to deviate from my line. And maybe that's true. I don't know. Maybe he was so desperate to win and first race in the rainbow jersey that he just wasn't quite clearly thinking. But that's a bad day.
But it was like he was manic, wasn't it? Because the craziness started well before the sprint. He was kind of switching around a bit. He nearly took them all out. He nearly took Roglic out about a kilometre, just before the kilometre go sign, I think, or just as they turned into the final K. And then he was kind of darting around and looking over his shoulder and then accelerating. And I know that's the nature of the sprint, but at the same time, he seemed so not all over the place, but just as you say, over tense and overexcited, and then to do the celebration so far from the line. Oh, you kind of really feel for him, because it was just, and it was so grandiose, the celebration, the whole arm spread, Jesus, in the world champions jersey.
But I thought from Roglic, it was almost an analogy of an entire 3-week Grand Tour, wasn't it? So instead of playing the role of Roglic, he was playing the role of Pogacar, wasn't he? Just coming up right at the last minute and stealing it from Alaphilippe. But that's what I love about Alaphilippe. He's sublime and ridiculous in equal measure. He sums up French cycling for me. And I love him more for losing it on the line as much as I love him for how he won the World Championship a week earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a degree of kind of it's kind of tragicomic, isn't it? I mean, it's ludicrous. And if you showed that to people who didn't watch cycling all the time, they'd just start giggling, because they wouldn't understand the significance of what he's done and the significance of that particular race. I mean, winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the oldest of the classics, in the World Champions jersey, it's a dream. It's a dream scenario.
Lizzie Dinan, her latest success. I mean, she is on a roll. Fair enough, she couldn't do it at the World Championships, but the field there was stacked. It wasn't really a race for her when they went away from it at the end. But her run of success, Sophie, is pretty epic at the moment.
She's impressive, and she's been consistent as well, hasn't she, Dinan, over the years? She's like a fine wine. She just keeps getting better.
I think there's something. It feels like she's reached a new level now as well. With the European Championships, obviously she won La Course in Nice as well, and now she's won Liège-Bastogne as well. She's consistently winning really, really major races now. I mean, I know she's obviously won major races before, but I don't know, like you say, it just feels like she's attained a new level. I think, which is great, because obviously she didn't give up the sport, but she took time out to have a family, and now she's come back. And there was quite a lot of disparagement, I think, at the time, Sophie. I'm not sure exactly if I remember correctly, but there are a few people who were kind of like, oh, once you've had a kid, you'll never reach the level you're at before. But she's really proven a point, I think.
Yeah. Have you ever interviewed her, Jeremy? Because I interviewed her around the when the Tour de France started in Yorkshire, and she was fearsome, absolutely fearsome. There are certain people, when you interview them, you think, oh, this is going to be an all right, and others where you think, if I ask a wrong question here, I'm going to get both barrels.
Yeah, she's quite spiky. I mean,
yeah, and I love that. Don't get me wrong, I love that.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, I've met her a couple of times, and the time I most remember is when Trek Segafredo launched their team on a rest day at the Tour. So, we went along to their hotel, and we knew they were launching this women's team, and they had a press conference for the men's team, and then they had a press conference for the women's team, and it was an exclusively male media pack that were there. I think you were there, Sophie, as well. I can't remember now, but I think it was kind of 99.9% male, and we were all asking her questions about the role of women in sport. And I just thought it was a supreme irony that she's being asked a question by a bunch of blokes. It's kind of, that's the kind of stuff that really cycling has to work on.
It does. Let's have a look at the Binkbank Tour. I didn't watch any of the Binkbank Tour, so you'll have to fill me in here, Jeremy. How good was Van der Poel?
Well, it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't the most scintillating race until the final day, because they went up the Muur in Gerardsbergen, 3 times, I think it was, they went up the Muur, and he did this kind of the third but last time they went up. He did this bonkers attack, 50k from the finish, and he held off the whole of the peloton and won the stage and won the race overall. So it was kind of straight out of the bonkers Mathieu van der Poel exploit book. Yet another of his kind of remarkable rides where his bike handling was supreme. Where loads of times it looked like they were going to come back to him, or he was going to be caught by another group, and basically he held off everybody until the final sprint, and then won that as well. So it was an extraordinary performance, and kind of people have been waxing lyrical about Wout van Aert after the Tour, but then I think Mathieu van der Poel has now come back with a bang to remind everybody that he's there as well. So
it's all about cyclocross, that bike handling. And it is, and I think what's great, yeah, we're seeing all these new young dynamic riders who can do everything. It seems to be that they weren't just road riders. They've come from a mountain bike scene, they've come from the cyclocross scene, they've got handling, they've got skills, they've got panache. And I love that. And I love the fact that all the different codes of cycling are being muddied together. I think it's interesting. Almost back to the original days of cycling.
Yeah, and I think you've got a crossover now with gravel and stuff as well, haven't you? Obviously, I mean, people are quite scornful about the inclusion of a gravel section in a Grand Tour, but you're right. There is more kind of cross fertilization between the disciplines, whereas it used to be like if somebody rode a Grand Tour road track. I mean, I remember when Wiggins, you know, there was always this thing like, oh, are you going to ride track or road this year? It was like this huge thing that he couldn't do both. And I think that's started to fall away a bit now. Obviously, if you're preparing for the Olympics, it's different to preparing for the Tour de France. But I think the kind of, you know, the old school thinking has slightly fallen away about that.
Indeed. Let's move on to the Giro d'Italia, because in this season, like no other, we're here at the battle for the Maglia Rosa at the end of the Tour de France. The 103rd edition of this race winds its way up through Italy, and 3,497 kilometres later, we'll finish in Milan on the bizarrely, well, it is bizarre because it's never happened before, the 25th of October. We are 2 stages down when we record this. Jeremy, where are we at so far after these 2 stages?
Well, as you say, we had the downhill time. Well, it wasn't solely downhill. We had the kind of up and down time trial on Saturday, which really set out the stall for Geraint Thomas to be, of the overall contenders, he's best placed. He didn't win. His teammate Filippo Ganna won. But the most striking thing so far is what a disaster it's been for the Astana team, because they lost Miguel Angel Lopez on the first day in the time trial when he had this bizarre and really horrible crash, actually, where he seemed to hit a pothole and lose control of his time trial bike and just crumpled into the barriers at the side of the road at quite some speed. Because it was shot head on, you couldn't tell quite how quickly he was going until he started skidding side on. And then today, stage 2, they lost Vlasov as well, who's got a stomach upset. So they've already lost. They've got 3 major mountain climbers in that team, Jakob Fuglsang being the 3rd. And they've lost 2, and we've only had 48 hours of racing, so it's already been a complete and utter disaster for them. But then this is all in keeping with the Giro, which does this kind of stuff. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Fuglsang, you know, finishes 3rd or something, despite all this. It's and you can be sure that, you know, these won't be the only riders, these won't be the only people who have like bizarre accidents or, you know, something strange happens in this race, especially with the weather that we are almost certainly going to get later on in the race.
To lose 1 GC contender is unlucky. To lose 2 careless, Sophie, perhaps. If we look at the best of the contenders, the people who we think are going to be shaking up for the GC, Geraint Thomas, he's possibly looking in an amazing position right now because there's 3 time trials in the Giro d'Italia over the course of the 3 weeks. I mean, he can climb, he can time trial. Surely it's already his to lose.
Oh, you can never say that at the Giro.
We can say it. We're saying it now. It's his to lose.
Say that at the Giro. And I think I would have been surprised if he wasn't sort of the best of the GC riders at this point, because speaking about riders' backgrounds, Thomas comes from the track. So I had no doubt, unless something went drastically wrong, that he would have got through stage 2 quite well. I think that there are those time trials in there as an advantage for him. I don't know if it would be as much of an advantage as it might have been in previous years. But when you look at like the next best place to is Simon Yates, and he doesn't like you saying that he's perhaps not as good a time trialer as other people in the peloton. He says it's something he's worked up quite hard on the last few years. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's Thomas's race to lose, but he looks good. He looks very lean, and his first 2 outings he's kept safe and he positioned himself well on that 15K flyer. So
yeah, he's 23 seconds down on the man who's wearing the pink jersey. That's Filippo Ganna, his Ineos Grenadiers teammate. The time trialist took it on stage 1. I was saying this to Jeremy before we recorded this, but I think Ineos Grenadiers, after the debacle they had at the Tour de France, Sophie, I think they need to come here and not just win it. I think they need to absolutely batter everyone. They need to win by a healthy margin. They need to take stages. They need multiple jerseys. Do you think that? Or do you think they're just here and they'll be happy to go home with the pink jersey?
So I don't know if that'd be, I mean, they're not going to say that publicly, are they? I think behind closed doors, that would be, if not part of the conversation, then certainly part of the mentality. You know, Ineos, formerly Sky, they're a Grand Tour team. This is their bread and butter. I think it's fair to say they don't win as many races outside of Grand Tours. So I think coming into the Giro, that would certainly be part of possibly the psyche. And Jez might have better intel than me. He speaks to Dave Brailsford, quite regularly. I think the fact that there's a slightly older team at the Giro will help too. The tour, they had a whole lot of new kids there. It was more of a rebirth for them.
I think also that it's already been a success, hasn't it? Because they've already won the first stage and they've already had the pink jersey. So by their standards, of course, that's not enough. They'll want to win the race overall, but they already have shown a degree of strength in depth. It was quite interesting this afternoon watching stage 2 that they were on the front for quite a lot towards the kind of last 15K, and then they got swept aside a bit. And Geraint Thomas didn't. He was very vigilant. He was up there at the. It was a hilltop finish, so you needed to be at the front, and he was at the front, and he maintained his position overall. So it was a good day for him. But I thought the team, they seemed to be doing a little bit of what happened in the Dauphiné, a little bit of what happened in the Tour as well, where they moved to the front and then got swept aside a bit more easily. And I think maybe the kind of the aura that they had, the invincibility that they had kind of a year ago, a couple of years ago, that's not there anymore, and they're going to have to rebuild that. So they may, it's 3 weeks long. There's going to be, as we keep saying, there's going to be lots of iffy weather. There's lots of mountain climbs, but they will want to impress themselves on the peloton a bit more than they seem to be at the moment, because they seem to be kind of almost like swatted aside a bit more easily than they ever have been before. And I think that's something, they just lack the presence.
It's weird to see that as well, considering over the past however many years it is, we've got used to seeing them dominating, sitting at the front, no one can go around them.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people seem to think Thomas has got this in the bag already, which I think is a gross error. And I wouldn't ever say something like that, because I think there's every chance that something strange can happen. I mean, he's been taken out by a race motorbike before. We've had people in the pink jersey 3 days from Milan blowing up. Stephen Kruijswijk's had that experience 4 years ago with Vincenzo Nibali, who ousted him 3 days from the finish. So this race it's in its kind of infancy completely.
Of course
so
it is. Of course it is. But okay. But I know this is hyperbole. I know it is, and it's bombastic. But why not? Just for the sake of this, you look at
it's hype and bombast.
Well, let's go for it. Let's look at it right now. Thomas, down on him. Sean Yates. Every time I see S Yates, I always think it's Sean Yates. Simon Yates, 26 seconds down. Then no one else really is particularly close to him to have shipped that much time over what was not a particularly long prologue TT. Kruijswijk is 1 minute 21 down on him. Pozzovivo is 1 minute 10 down on him. Mike has 1 minute 37 down on him. As an opening salvo with the team that the Ineos Grenadiers have got there, with the heritage and the class that Geraint Thomas has, I mean, that is already 2 stages in. That is a massive show of intent from Ineos Grenadiers.
Yeah, but this is not the Tour de France. This is a different race where it's much harder to control it, and also you can lose buckets of time in mountain stages. And we've seen that again. The history of the Giro is full of dramatic turnarounds and full of mountain stages where people lose 3, 4, 5 minutes. So he could easily build up a lead and then lose it. We saw Simon Yates have that experience. We've seen, as I say, Stephen Kruijswijk had that experience as well. My money actually is on, well, I'm looking at it, I think Kruijswijk is Jumbo-Visma are going to be on a mission. Surely, if Ineos are on a mission, after their experience at the Tour de France, I mean, if Ineos were upset, they were upset. How upset are Jumbo-Visma going to be after what happened on the final weekend of the Tour?
Can't wait.
They're going to be chomping. Surely they're going to be chomping to rub everybody's noses in it, especially if they can get the chance to rub anyone from UAE's nose in it. I thought they'd be absolutely delighted to. So
OJ, yeah, I was about to say, OJ, maybe you should come Team Kruijswijk, so not instead of Team Thomas. Food for thought there.
Where's your money, Sophie? Looking at the first 2 stages, where's your money?
I'm sitting on the fence here. I hate people that sit on the fence, but I actually don't know. I think Jez makes a good point about Kruijswijk and Jumbo-Visma. I think they have not a point to prove anymore, but they've got the momentum going with the team. And maybe wanting to stake a little bit more of a claim, like Primož Roglic won Liège, and the first thing he said afterwards was, "I'm glad I finally won a race." And that was after he was in the yellow jersey for however many days. So I think from that quote alone, you could probably say that obviously that's weighed, if not on him, then perhaps a little bit on the team. So,
but also I wouldn't dismiss Simon Yates. I mean, Sophie, obviously, you know Matt White, and you know as well how much it would have smarted when in 2018 when they had that, infamous collapse on the stage of Sestria when sorry, it wasn't Sestria, was it? The stage that Chris Froome won with that spectacular.
What an amazing day that was.
Yeah. So it's infamous.
Not for
moment,
Mitchelton Scott, obviously.
Moment. No, and a total humiliation. Obviously, since then he's won the Vuelta, so he's proven he can win a Grand Tour. He's proven he can win a very hard Grand Tour, up against a lot of the guys that he's racing here as well. So you would think, that Simon Yates would have a very good chance. His time trialing isn't good enough on its own, so he will be reliant on spectacular feats in the mountains. And surely, if they have learned from 2018, they will be waiting until the final week, because there's no point doing it.
I'd hope so. But they put their best team around him as well. Like Simon has got a thing with the Giro. He does sort of like a love-hate relationship with it. He's had highs, he's had lows. And Mitchelton Scott have purposely put their best team. They sent an opportunistic squad to the Tour, which is unusual. Like normally, teams like, the Tour's a be on. Whereas for Mitchelton, they've put their best guys behind Yates at the Giro.
I mean, he gave this embarrassing press conference at the start of the Giro last year when he said that thing about, he said in an interview with Andy McGrath of Rouleur magazine, he said, my rivals should be shitting themselves, if I can say that on the Peloton podcast.
Well, you have, and I don't have a beep with me.
Okay. Well, he said that, and then that was repeated back to him by me in the press conference. I said, do you really mean that? And he said, yeah, they should be completely. And he said, he was asked, who's your favorite? And he pointed at himself, went, me.
Wow.
And I mean, this year, he's not doing any of that kind of swagger at all. He's being much more modest and much more contained. And I think they're probably just get through the first 2 weeks, and then the race really begins for us.
I don't know what a petard is, but he doesn't want to be hoisted by it ever again.
No.
So, with that in mind,
especially his own.
What is it? Does anyone actually know what a petard is? I probably should Google it.
I'm going to Google it after.
I'm going to Google it as well. Let's listen to this. Now, William Fotheringham has spoken to Marco Pastonesi. Obviously, none of us who are here on this podcast right now are at the race in Italy. Very few journalists are there. But there is one, and that is Marco Pastonesi. He is a cycling writer at La Gazzetta dello Sport. He's been there for almost 25 years, as well as the author of numerous books on Italian cycling. And William spoke to him about what it was like in Italy with the Giro taking place in this whole new world that we've got going on.
So, Marco, welcome to the podcast. And could you tell me briefly, how is this Giro d'Italia seen in Italy? Do people feel it's necessary to make people feel happier during the pandemic, that it's a good thing? Or do people feel that it is a dangerous risk to run a major bike race through Italy at the moment? What is the general feeling about the race?
I think that most of the people think that it's a good chance. It's a good chance because we need to come back to the life. So obviously there's a risk for the health of everybody, but at the same time, it's a good chance to get out of the house and to follow the rules. And during the pandemic and during the first lockdown, the Italians showed to be disciplined, to be ordered and to be according the rules. It was a surprise, but it worked. So this is the reason why we have we have less people sick, than the other countries. So the Giro d'Italia is seen as an opportunity, not as a danger.
So can it be said that it is like the 1946 Giro d'Italia, that it can bring people together, make the country feel better?
I think so. That the big difference between cycling and soccer is that the cycling join the people and the soccer share the people. And so just after the Second World War, the cycling was, the Giro d'Italia was a hymn to the life, a rebirth, a restarting. And in such a way, I think it's the same now, not so bad as in the 46, but that was a war, another war, any invisible enemies, but probably this is sort of the same feeling. So this is actually another Giro d'Italia, very important, very historical, and I hope very unique.
During the Tour de France, there were questions all the time whether the Tour de France would get to Paris, whether it would arrive at the finish. Are there the same questions about the Giro, or is there a feeling of certainty because Italy is not suffering and does not have as many COVID-19 cases as, for example, France did when the Tour de France was going on? So is the feeling that it will get to Milan, or are there doubts?
Now we think that we can arrive to Milano. I think this is not the problem. There is another problem. It's October. Giro d'Italia was always in May, June, then May, and so which is the start of the springtime, and we had bad days with bad weather. So you can remember the Bondone in the 56 or the Passo del Gavia in the 88. So terrific days, in the memories, in the archives of the Giro d'Italia. But in October, it's we don't know what can go on, what can happen. So today in Sicily was a summer day, but in Milano, for example, was freezing. So we actually don't know. The problem is will be the final week on the Alps. So I know there was another possibility, for the stage number A and B, but it would be dangerous.
So you think it is possible that the Giro will have problems getting over the Colle Agnello, the Stelvio, because they are so high, and as you say, this time of year the weather is a massive risk.
Yes. In these days, the Gavia, for example, was the road was closed, was off. I know that Gavia is not for this Giro d'Italia, but the Stelvio is higher. So the danger is always, among us. It's a possibility. It's a possibility to change the way, to change the stage.
If we look at the favourites for the race, everybody seems to say at the moment, because obviously after the time trial yesterday where he went so well, that Geraint Thomas is the big favourite. Do you think it's that simple? Do you think it's a simple fight between a rider who can time trial and everyone else who can climb?
I think that Geraint Thomas is the number one of the Giro d'Italia, and the first stage was the two first stages was for him, because Miguel Angel Lopez was out from the time trial, and today Vlasov. So Astana was completely upset, and well, the other guys probably are not so strong, and their teams are not so strong as Ineos. And well, we have a big hope. Obviously, Vincenzo Nibali. Vincenzo Nibali is going to be 36, so he's an old man. He's an old rider, and is obviously is in the downtrend, no, the downtrend, of his career. But he's a warrior. He's an ancient warrior from Sicily, and we hope, I think all the Giro d'Italia hope that Nibali can fight, can struggle with Geraint Thomas, maybe even in the Etna, his mountain.
Marco, I have a feeling that in Italy, cycling has struggled a little bit in the last few years. There are not so many teams. Some of the races seem to have struggled as well. Do you think if this Giro is really good, if it produces quality racing, because of the context, it might be possible to relaunch cycling with this Giro in Italy?
But obviously, the Giro d'Italia is the best promotion for cycling. The Italian cycling is in crisis, is in a low down, but we have talents, and Ganna is one of them, and Sobrero is another good guy, and we have young talents, but we lack in the organization, we lack in the sponsorship, we lack in the culture of cycling. We have no connection, we have no link between cycling and bicycles, and this is the problem.
Well, let's hope it is a good Giro, and let's hope it goes smoothly. And personally, I would like Vincenzo Nibali to win. Is that your feeling as well?
I hope so. I'm not sure of that, but I'm for him because he's a good guy, and he's a good friend, and he's a good ambassador for Italian cycling.
And as I think you say in Italy, la speranza è eterna. The hope is eternal.
We say la speranza è l'ultima a morire. The hope is the last to die.
La speranza la ultima a morire, which hope dies last. It's a wonderful sentiment.
Oh, that's so romantic the way you said it.
It was terrible, wasn't it? Do you know what? There's something awful about someone with a British accent attempting pronunciations, because you either have to do it in a British accent or you have to try and pretend that you're a holiday maker ordering off an ice cream menu and put on that terrible faux accent. I'll go one more time. La speranza è ultima amore. Is that better?
Yeah, that sounded slightly threatening though as well.
Okay, hope dies last. I mean, what a way to talk about a Grand Tour taking place in a pandemic. Yeah,
but I think also there is something really special about this year's Giro because of everything that's happened in Italy, and because Italy, suffered so horrendously. Northern Italy especially suffered so much, and they seem to go through it in a very lonely way as well, while the rest of Europe at that time wasn't experiencing it at that level. I mean, I was in the south of France at a race called the Tour de Provence in February, and I remember thinking, it's really strange that this virus is only in Italy. I mean, it's the most naive and looking back in hindsight, it's the most naive and stupid thing that I could have thought. But I kind of did think it was an Italian thing, and I think a lot of people did, until obviously it started spreading around all of Europe. So they've been through a lot, and I think the Giro, particularly because it expresses that Italian love of style and panache and beauty and all those things and romance. It's more than the Tour, because the Tour is about big business. The reason the Tour had to go ahead was because all the teams wanted it to go ahead and all the sponsors wanted it to go ahead. The Giro is for the people. That's the difference, I think.
That's a lovely thought. I've done both races, and I must admit, I found the Tour interesting because it's the Tour, but the Giro I loved a lot more. Have you done a Giro, Soph?
I have, yeah. I've done a few. I think the last one I did, I got my foot run over just past the finish line. It was
great memories then.
It was bad. I always go to the Giro and get like that sort of one horrendous injury.
So it's not just the riders who come a cropper, it's the journalists as well.
No. I can't remember who I was interviewing. It would have been a while ago actually, because I think I was interviewing Cadell Evans, this like massive tangent, and just past the finish line. And he kind of reached out. He had a can in his hand, and he reached out, and I thought I was in his way, so I moved, and then I moved out, and then I stepped forward, and then the next time he moved his hand, I thought he wanted space, so I moved back, and he was actually trying to tell me there was a car behind me, and this was like DS just flat ran over my foot. But then being the Giro, and you just pass the finish line, you carry on, don't you? I had to interview like 2 more riders I needed, so I kind of just ended up like dragging my foot like up further up the finish line into something. It was horrible, but I do love the Giro, and I think like the majority of riders that you speak to are the same. They say the Tour is sort of very touristy, very commercial, but the Giro is sort of just more, like the people are passionate about cycling, rain, hail or shine. I think I was there for the stage Adam Hansen won solo years ago, and it was pouring rain, and that was just kids sitting on brick walls at the finish. And I don't know, I still love it just because like there's no such thing as bad coffee or bad food in Italy, is there? You can go to a service station and it's still going to be good.
Are you saying that there is such a thing as bad food and bad coffee in France there, Sophie?
Yeah. Anyone that doesn't say that otherwise is a dead set liar. That, and I'm also celiac, so me, like, I'm reduced to service station salads pretty much all throughout the days of the tour anyway. But coffee in France is like a case of how desperate are you?
Yeah, liars, all of them. The other thing I just wanted to ask you about, Sophie, was Marco called Nibali an old warrior from Sicily. I think it would be the romantic thought for Nibali to win this Giro d'Italia right here at the end of his career. Has he got a chance?
Would be. I don't think it's going to happen. But then again, Richie Porte finished third at the Tour, and he, what would you call a veteran now as well when you consider that the 22-year-old took the yellow jersey. So I'm going to sit on the fence for the whole, at least first week of the Giro and just say, you never know.
You're sitting on the fence for the whole podcast at the moment.
Yeah, entirely.
Oh, no, rubbish. I made calls during the Tour. They were all pretty much wrong.
Yeah, well, I don't think...
Well, there you go. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I said Peter Sagan would endure, and that didn't happen, and I'm not sure it's going to happen at the Giro either.
Let's end this podcast on the EF kit debate. Now, if you haven't seen it, then obviously you've not been on the internet for the past 48 hours, because it's all over it, wall-to-wall coverage for the EF team, because at the last minute they switched their kit, and Rafa, who made their kit, had a hookup with a skateboard brand called Palace, who you may be aware of, you may not. They have started to move into fashion of Palace. They've had some interesting hookups before. Do you like it is the first question, Jeremy Whittle. You're a traditionalist. I'm definitely not. Do you like it?
I'm not solely a traditionalist. I'm also in favour of, dislocating the norm and all that kind of thing, and anarchic ideas and cutting edge ideas. And I think it's all of those. A lot of people said it's a throwback to bad kit from the 80s and 90s, but I don't think it is, because I think it is very radical. And also the reason I recoiled in horror, of course, like most people did, just because it's such an assault on the eyes. But now I quite like it, and I've got quite used to it. Like anything, the shock of the new, And the other thing I'd say is it's a really nice retort to all the kind of like the straining to be cool with all the black.
But it is. But the thing is, though, it is straining to be cool. It is straining to be cool, but in a very hipster way. And I don't mean that as bad. I mean, when I first saw it, because Jonathan Vaughters tweeted it out as when they do the layout of the kit of how they make it, when he tweeted it out, I thought it was a joke. So I thought he literally had got one of the layouts and just stuck some EF logos on it and a duck in the middle and some, as William Fotheringham said, some hallucinogenic patterning around the bottom. It's a very difficult kit to explain, and they go from that brash fluoro pink number. And I retweeted it out. I stuck it on my Instagram going, yeah, definitely want it. Sort of as a joke. I mean, I did want it, but I didn't think it was real. And now I know it is real.
Do you remember when they were the Argyle Armada, and the Garmin thing first started, with Jonathan and Doug Ellis and David Miller and Christian Velde and everything, is years ago now, and they had Argyle, and everyone recoiled in amazement that they dare have Argyle on their kit, and now it's like, well, that's really staid and boring. So people will get used to it. It's just that whole thing of the shock of the new, and it's because, as I say,
they won't get used to it, Jeremy. They won't get used to it, because the brilliance of it is a hookup for one race, because they couldn't wear their pink jerseys. So brilliantly, they have it for already. Well, yeah, but they have it for a race, and then it'll go away. And all the fanboys like me will go buy, because I've never worn a replica kit. And I don't think I've ever really been a fan of a team. I've liked certain riders, but they've moved around. I don't think you really have a team. EF, I dig everything they do. I love the ethos. I love this dual calendar that they do. I love the fact they ride gravel races. I love this sticking it to the man middle finger aesthetic that Jonathan Vaughters is definitely pushing. And I think this, Sophie, with the kit was a masterstroke, especially getting the UCI to fine him. It has to have been a play. It has to have been a brilliant bit of marketing to get the UCI to fine him. He then goes, well, look at how old and boring the UCI are. They don't like our kit. Have you €5,000?
First of all, I'm going to say about the kit, I think you're both being far too polite. It's no offense to Jerry, it's disgusting. There's no other way you can describe that kit. It's absolutely disgusting. It looks like someone's gone on a bad trip, thrown up on a piece of like lycra, and then sold it. I'm sorry. It's
not on the fence now, are you, Sophie?
No, I told you I'd come good. And a lot of the consensus seems to be that it was a marketing stroke of genius. So if it was, then JV can claim that as well. I mean, I think the only person that actually looks bad out of this is the UCI, like the governing body of an international sport. Out of all the things you could be worried about, and on the back of David Lapartient using the term fake news at a press conference, like that's what they're worried about. It's not.
What did he say?
I think there are bigger and better things to do in terms of governing the sport than, finding teams for a disgusting jersey. But so whether it was a marketing stroke or not,
let's put it. Hang on. Let's put it in context. They fined EF more. Well, they fined EF basically. They didn't find Gianni Moscon for using the N-word when he racially abused Kevin Reza 3 years ago. I mean, that's an appalling stat for them to reflect on, because the fact that they thought that they didn't need to discipline him for that, but they need to discipline them over their kit. And okay, they didn't make the deadlines, and okay, they deliberately tried to play with the rules and all of that to do this kind of this launch. But at the same time, get your priorities right. Safety and racism and diversity, those are much more pressing issues than sock length or kit design.
Well, you know Jonathan Vorter, so you set this up because we've actually got a voice note from JV himself. You set this up.
Yes, I asked him if he felt sometimes that he despaired, really, because he's been involved in kind of obviously anti-doping. He's an ex-doper. He's set up his own team. He's been involved in anti-doping. He's also been involved with the teams organisations as well. So he's been tried to be a force for change. Whatever people think of him, I think. And some of his initiatives as well. I think in general, he's been a force for change. But I asked him, did he despair when, the UCI kind of got hot under the collar about this and didn't care about things like, rider safety, and had the gall to call it fake news?
Honestly, I'm long since past despair. I think my peak despair in realizing the inefficiency in which the UCI governs the sport was, in the time in which I was the president of the teams union, back in like 2011 and 2012. At that point in time, it was very difficult for me to look at the harsh reality of that the issues that mattered, they did not seem to care about, and the issues that really didn't matter seemed to be of utmost importance. Honestly, over the past decade, I've just slowly kind of given up on that and just focused on doing what our team does well, and that's disrupting the culture of cycling, and maybe that's going to be a more effective way to change the governance of the sport than being in a state of despair constantly.
It's an interesting thought, Jeremy. Will it work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the kit is great fun. It's joyful and it's exuberant. I get what Sophie's saying. I think it's like Marmite, isn't it? You either think that's kind of exciting and have a good laugh at it, and especially the helmets. I mean, the helmets are mad.
Just to point out, the TT helmets have a duck on them, and it looks like a duck's head on their heads. I mean, they're brilliant. Yes. A bit worrying, a little bit. If you remember Ed the Duck, if you remember that film from back in the early 90s, very much like that.
Yeah, so I mean that's all great, and I think it enlivens the sport, and it also moves it away from the kind of like slightly po-faced posturing designs that we've had to live with. Where everyone's like, "It's too cool," the kind of blue steel era that we've had to go through. But now, now it's like the UCI. What are they doing? How can David Lapartient, who I've met on multiple occasions now and interviewed, and I think he's a decent man, but how can he say anything about safety and related to fake news in any context at all? How can he say that? It's beyond. It's beyond.
It's a discussion for another podcast because we've reached the end of this one. Final question, Sophie: would you wear the kit? Would you wear that EF kit? No. Jeremy?
The helmet, maybe I like, but only because I like ducks. But
Jeremy?
Yeah, exactly. It's unfair to ducks. It's unfair to ducks. Yeah.
Would you wear the kit, Jeremy?
You must be quackers.
Hey, I wouldn't just wear the kit. I'd wear every single part of it. And I am clicking on the website waiting for them to drop it. Because if it drops and they do it in my size, which is XXL, I'm going to be in that kit. I'm absolutely going to be.
Yeah, but you're hallucinating, so that's why.
But I'm only going to, basically just so people can't see me and they throw up on their bikes. Anyway, thank you so much to Sophie Smith from over there in Adelaide or Victoria or Melbourne or Sydney, whichever one you said earlier on. And also to Jeremy Whittle. We'll be back with another podcast in a few days' time. Make sure you subscribe, then it'll drop into your feed whenever you need it. A rating is always fun as well, just for our egos. Thank you as always to Peloton subscribers and Aerogram listeners for being part of the La Course on Tête podcast. And if you want writing on the Giro and every other race that's going on, make sure you check out that website, lacourseontete.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time. And always remember, la speranza, la ultima amore. Hope dies last.